Welcome everybody to Spirit Matters. My name is Dayal Guranga and I'm here with Kishore Chandra and Acyuta Gopi. This is episode 2 of our Daily Bhakti Center podcast. And this is my official radio voice, which we've determined as such yesterday in episode 1. If you missed episode 1, please go back and refer to it yesterday. This podcast being brought to you, sponsored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Sri Radha Govinda Dev and Sri Sri Radha Mulidhar Gaura Chandra. And I'm so happy to be here with you guys. I was just sitting up in here this morning and I was like, this is the greatest way to start my day. Just fully gets me out, which by the way, it's 9 a.m. And I realized as I said that, I'm like confessing like, oh, I'm just starting my day at 9 o'clock. I'm sorry, guys. We're supposed to be getting up before the sunrise and all that jazz. But it's just like pulls me out of wherever it is I'm going through. Because you sometimes just wake up in the morning and it's just like, where did those last 2 hours go? And it kind of pulls me into something spiritual and uplifting. So thank you guys so much for being here. How both of you guys doing?
I feel like I'm better now that it's sunny. I kind of woke up today. I was like, I'm so glad I stuck it out with this week. It's looking so much better.
It is looking better. How you doing, Kishore?
I'm doing great. I'm also kind of in that same mood. I woke up and there was actual light coming through my windows instead of darkness. And I was just like, I'm glad I stuck it out yesterday. I'm
Gosh,
glad I
you
made it.
guys sound like you weren't going to make it yesterday.
It was
I should
close, okay? It was
I
so
should have
close.
I
It
should have called
was.
and checked. I should have called and checked in. Every sunset, I'm going to call a Chuta and be like, "You're going to stick it through. You're going to make it." Call her up at 4 p.m.
I know.
Um, Yesterday we were chatting and we left off. We were talking a lot about overthinking and this idea. Achuta, you brought up this beautiful kind of topic about showing up authentically in our lives and kind of making this shift from living our spiritual lives just for ourselves and then kind of moving a little bit out of isolation to share our journey with other people, not because we have such, amazing knowledge more than anybody else, but just because sharing our journey is something unique and valuable that we have, that Krishna appreciates, that other people appreciate. And we left off, you referenced this prayer, this first prayer that I put on my 100-day project, which is now a multi 100-day project. And it's this prayer that was inspired by this Bhagavatam verse that said, "May what I've been given that is of value never leave me. May what doesn't serve me fly away. And may I trust that what is here is exactly what I need to come closer to myself and you." Inspired by Bhagavatam, verse 1080:42. "You boys are first class Brahmins, and I am satisfied with you. May all your desires be fulfilled, and may the Vedic mantras you have learned never lose their meaning for you in this world or the next." So you brought up that verse, and then I started talking, and we capped the day. I didn't give you a chance to share why you brought that up and your realizations and reflections on it. So I'd love to start with you on that one.
Sure. It's that idea of what has been placed in front of us is not just random, one, it's divinely arranged, but then accepting that divine arrangement. And we can hear about that a lot, but to actually practically put it into application is kind of difficult. And we were talking about this idea of kind of just saying yes to the service opportunities, to the amazing opportunities that come into our lives, saying yes to even having conversations with people who are placed into our lives for whatever reason, and really kind of grabbing that those opportunities and then running with them and allowing them to kind of dictate the flow of our spiritual lives, which I guess like it's like just our lives now. I feel like the more open we are, the less there's like this line between spiritual lives and other lives. It just becomes our life.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what I love about watching the both of you. It doesn't seem like there's any more hard lines. And I love looking at that. And I kind of wanted to volley the ball back into your court, Dial, because as announcer, I feel like, you announce really well and then you do this thing where you're like, and then I don't have to talk about me, but you do.
I do that when I teach yoga classes, which I do not do often. I'm not the most accomplished asana yogi. But I like to talk and I can sequence through a class and I tell students whenever I do lead a class, it's like the great thing about being a teacher is that whenever you get to a hard pose or something that's difficult, you can just come out of it, walk around and just tell everybody else to do it. Like we can have everybody get into this difficult twist of a crow pose or chair pose and hold it for 5 breaths, and I'm gonna not demonstrate and just walk around and tell a story.
Yeah.
And
So, I
so,
mean, I kind of wanted to hear what it was like for you, kind of this switch, because I mean, I've never in the traditional sense of the word been a monk like that. Like, you were in this place where you are a brahmachari, and growing up knowing brahmacharis, um they're not like you. So how
hmm,
do we get from this space of having this like really ascetic mindset? Like there's something about like a really bare, austere mindset, not just about living, but it's up here. Moving into this mindset now where we're more personal, really more feeling, and being open with those feelings, even enough to like end off conversations with your friends saying, "Okay, love you, bye." And I was like, you know what? I need those things.
hmm,
And at a certain point, you can kind of feel where it feels weird. And I'm like, but it shouldn't feel weird. Like we're in a really, really personal spiritual journey. Like bhakti yoga is supposed to be this personal experience. We have a supreme person, and yet and still we don't tell each other that we love each other. Like that's kind
hmm,
of that should be the weird thing, not to hear it from somebody else and really like think twice. Like, wow, huh, that was interesting. I was like,
hmm,
no, that's what I want from my people.
yeah.
So yeah, how did that happen for you?
I I it was interesting. Part of, and I'm gonna reference a couple things are coming to my mind. When I first decided, I lived as a brahmachari monk for 10 years, from when I was 18 years old until around, I guess, like 28 or something. So I've never lived alone my entire life. My mother ran a daycare center from our home growing up. My parents divorced when I was 3, and then from that moment on, my mom was already kind of running a daycare center. So there was kids in the house my entire life. It was like a mini ashram already. Kids in the neighborhood, a dozen kids. And then when I was 18, I moved right out of the house into an ashram. And then I've lived in an ashram with other people since then. And then I got married. And then when I got married, I moved in an apartment with another couple. We were sharing an apartment with another couple. So there was 4 of us in the house. And then they eventually moved out. Now it's me and my wife and my dog. And so that was it. That was my chance to ever live alone. Um, but when I first got married, I remember we were recommended this book that we read. It was by a Christian author, Gary Thomas or something, called Sacred Marriage. And it was very interesting. In the book, he mentioned that the tagline of the book was, "What if marriage wasn't meant to make you happy, but meant to make you holy?" And it really was, without using these words, it was the idea of like marriage as an ashram, like as a process by which we grow spiritually, because it shows that mirror and it forces us to grow in ways we wouldn't otherwise have been able to. And he said something interesting, because even in his own tradition, there was this kind of, because we live in the Krishna conscious movement, or in Krishna bhakti culture. There's been this idea, less so now, but especially then, and this idea that like if you really want to make it, you got to live an ascetic lifestyle. You got to give it all up. You got to be a monk. You got to go eat carrots in the cave, like we talked about yesterday. And then it's like if you can't hack it, then option B is go ahead and get married and live the easy life. Blah blah blah. So he said that even in his own tradition of Christianity, there was, which I wasn't aware of, there was still that kind of sentiment sometime of like being a monk or being, and he kind of like struggled with that because he was a very serious practitioner. And he said that he realized that there's somebody told him, or he realized, he said his advice was, and again, he's mentioning it in a Christian context, is he said, if you want to be free to serve God, or he said to serve Jesus in his context, then by all means don't get married because it takes up a lot of time. And he said, but if you want to become more like Jesus, as in like in your character, and learn to love in that way, he said, by all means, getting married can be the best thing you can possibly do. Now, granted, you may not some of us may not get married, but the idea isn't that you have to get married, but the idea is that entering into personal relationship. And I kind of had this realization that being as a monk or brahmachari, it gave me the opportunity to love everyone. But being in a personal relationship forced me to love someone in a way that you can't just, because when you love everyone, it's kind of from a distance a little bit. And you can kind of like, because I'm a brahmachari, like you had a lot of friends and a lot of people and there's brotherhood, but it's like if things are working here, I'm going to a different temple. Or, I'm going to India for 6 months, or this or that. But it's like in a personal relationship, it's really like, okay, I have to love you. And what he said was so beautiful in the book is, and I'm just running with this, sorry, you can cut me off at some point. What he said is that you get a taste of what it's like for God to love every single individual person because God doesn't give up on anybody. And so, in any circumstance in our life, when something gets hard, we can just, I give the example living in New York, like sometimes you walk into an empty subway cart, and you're like, how is the subway cart empty on rush hour? And we're like, oh, there's a smelly homeless person that's living in here. And we just get up and we move over to the other cart. But God's like, God never gets up and goes over to the other car. He's like, that person has God in their heart. And we have to find a way to love them through it, regardless of what comes back to us. And so for me, I don't know how we got on this thread, I remember, but I'm wondering how I gave this answer. But I think a lot of it was just this idea of making it very, very personal with individual people, like spending the time to get to know people. And then it really, more than anything, forced me to get to know myself. And I felt like when I got to know myself better, it allowed me and it propelled me to want to get to know other people better as well, because I found more interest in other people because I recognized the depth of my own story, um, opened me up to the depth of other people's stories. And that's where connection happens. That's what Krishna loves. And so it's been a continuous process of trying to honor and go deeper into my own story and invite other people to do the same. Which is
See,
why I
I
love
love it.
which is why I love talking to you guys.
And I feel like, see, I knew I wanted to ask that question. And I kind of feel like we hear about this idea of unconditional love so much. Unconditional love. And what does that really mean when we think about, especially with bhakti? We hear that bhakti should be unmotivated, like, right, and uninterrupted in order to fully satisfy the self. What does that even really mean in an everyday context? And I feel like you put that so perfectly. I feel like that unmotivated, uninterrupted devotion is love without an exit clause. It's like love
Mm,
without the escape hatch, where you don't just tap out whenever things get hard, when you stick with it, and when you are shown that mirror of yourself and other people, and you don't choose to run far away from it, and then you find new things about yourself, about other people, about God as a personality as a whole.
yeah. And then he saw that I was struggling with that in a personal relationship with a human, so he sent me a dog. And now I'm now and who has no problem accepting unconditional pure love and so really learning how to love without, I mean, he reciprocates just by being cute. And so yeah. Kishore, what's on your mind?
I'm just listening to you both, and it feels so nice. I love hearing about love because I think that many people struggle with love. I think many people struggle with the idea of self-love, of really what does it mean to love another. The idea of unconditional love. I know yesterday we talked about, having knowledge versus kind of like realizing that knowledge or realizing that practice in your everyday life. And I think the same thing goes for love. It's like I can intellectually understand what love is. I'm being told what love looks like, perhaps by the media or by movies. I see others around me and I'm comparing myself to them because they have love, but maybe I don't have love. But really, like a realized version of love or like deep love, I think, is what so many people are seeking. And it's a really beautiful thing because it really, I think that seeking, and this is what I heard from your story, Doyal, that I've heard many times. I love your story. It's like that seeking really prepares the heart. It really tills the heart for a deeper love to actually happen. Because something that, in our understandings of yoga, Raghu says this, right? And I think Kaylee, our dear friend, wrote a song about this, like having that that God-shaped hole in the heart that can't be filled by anything else. And so when you were speaking, Dayal, like that just really came up for me. It's like, wow, we're looking for love, right? I think there's that song, we're looking for love in all the wrong places. We're
Looking
looking
for
for love.
love in all the wrong
Yeah,
places. Looking for
exactly.
love.
And it's like I definitely relate to that, like looking for love in all the wrong places. But then at the same time, I think because of the culture that we live in, it's so easy to treat things and even treat people as disposable and not necessarily like see things through and not necessarily seeing as like, wow, this person was put in front of me, or this situation, this experience was put in front of me by God, like by Krishna, for me to learn, for me to go deeper. And it's so easy to just be like, I'm done, swipe the other direction, whatever direction it is, right? I'm just going on to the next thing, the next experience, the next person. And it really, I feel like that kind of culture just really keeps us on the surface of things. It doesn't allow us to go deeper. And so that's why I love both of you so much, because both of you are just so like deep, and I love it.
I want to read something here, and then we got to hear more of your voice, Acyuta. But this is just I was reading the caption that I wrote to this prayer because I think it highlights that a little bit. I'm just reflecting on it. I wrote, I've been given so much in my life personally, yet it's easy to take it for granted. And while in possession of so many spiritual gifts, I find myself wandering through the garbage heaps of gossip, casual criticisms, and social validations, seeking something outside myself to feel more whole. Today, I trust that I can let things outside myself go, and that what is placed in front of me is all I need to focus on. And so I think that that came from a place of, when something doesn't seem to be working, it's like, oh, there's something else rather than this challenge that's right in front of me. And I think that somehow by avoiding whatever's right here, I'm going to find what I'm looking for, but somehow accept, because you said this yesterday, Chut, and I'd love to hear more of what you said on it. It's just like, what's right here? This person, this situation, this feeling, whatever it is, it's right here. And how can I see how it's placed in front of me for a reason?
Yeah. Um, First off, like that prayer is just, and because we find ourselves stuck in the middle of so many things, and we can always kind of be thinking, as soon as I dig myself out of this hole, or as soon as I get myself out of this situation, then it'll be better, and I'll be fine, or I'll be good, and then it'll work. And more often than not, that actually doesn't wind up being the case. I was listening to a lecture by Radhanath Maharaj, and he referenced a verse from the Bhagavatam, but the purport is what he referenced more. And he said that Srila Prabhupada gave a really, really interesting translation to a verse that we kind of all have heard and know. So the verse was, let's see, there we go. So our famous verse from Bhagavad Gita: abandon all varieties of religion, just surrender unto me, right? And so I feel like, we hear that, but now Srila Prabhupada is giving this definition. It says, Krishna says, do not plan to achieve happiness and drive away distress. You will never be successful. Simply surrender unto me.
Wow. You got to send me that reference.
Oh, well. And he said it twice, and I was thinking about it because I was listening to this lecture and kind of like reflecting, like, I don't do that, I'm fine. It's for other people. And then literally like a few hours after, I found myself doing exactly that. And not the striving for success and happiness, but the driving away the distress. I was totally on that path. Like I was like, I'm praying and I'm chanting, I'm doing all the things, step 1, step 2, step 3. Shouldn't this be easier? Shouldn't these interactions hurt less? Shouldn't this? And then I
Mm,
just kind of realized that, oh wait, I'm doing exactly what I said I don't do. And not even in the striving for happiness, but in the driving away the anxiety and the distress. Really what I want to get to in a point is looking at what's in front of me and understanding that, okay, it's not that once I dig myself out of whatever hole, I'll be happy. How can I try and let go and surrender in this moment and realize that that is actually all it takes for me to be happy?
mm,
Not digging myself out of that hole, not getting the $1,000,000, not getting all the things, not any amount of all of it. It won't make me as happy as surrender will. And how can I figure out a way to surrender to this moment, to this
mm,
conversation, to like whether it means actually being present, whether it means putting my phone on do not disturb and actually really living a day, whether it like whatever it is, how can I actually surrender to divine arrangement in this moment?
mm. I need you to talk more about surrender because I love the thread you're going and I want to hear more of it. And sometimes people ask that, like we just say, okay, you got to surrender, or surrender to Krishna, or surrender to the moment. And then they're like, well, what does that mean? Or what does that look like? So like, what does that look, you referenced it a little bit, but what does that look like for you to surrender? Oh, great. She gave the example in the chat for those who want to see the chat, the verse.
Um, it's hard, so hard.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking you. That's why I'm asking you to answer it.
It's so hard. It's not easy. It's like when you look at it and you see like I'm really like I love mystical things. So you hear about this shadow work business a lot, right? Like confronting all this the darker side of yourself and really looking at like, okay, what can this actually teach me? And what they don't tell you and the suckiest part of it is that the shadow work never really stops. Ever. It's like somewhere in the world it's night at some point, all the time. And so there's always going to be this shadow aspect. I'm like, but why? Must I? Must it be a constant? And I feel like, surrender is a constant. And once I'm able to stop fighting that idea, first, stop fighting the idea that surrender is something to be accomplished, achieved. I've climbed that mountain. I'm over it. Right? I want to stop thinking I want to get over life or I want to get over whatever practice I'm doing. If it's chanting japa, I don't want to have the mindset like, let me just get this over with. Let me get the spirituality over with. I kind of want to be
Mm,
more present. And so that surrender for me starts with being more present, starts with, really looking at the situation, whatever happiness, distress, pain, pleasure, whatever, and really stop getting over it and being like, okay, what is there for me to learn in this situation? What is there for me to love in this situation? Even if I don't wind up loving it for the rest of my life, how can I
mm,
love it in this situation? Because I'm a person who's really, really fueled by love. If I don't love something, it's really hard for me to do it often.
mm.
So I have to find those moments where I'm okay to love something in this moment.
Is there a moment you can share with us where you chose surrender and what that looked like?
Childbirth.
Okay.
That,
At first, when you said that, I was like, I thought you meant your own birth, and I was like, how did you remember that? You're getting super esoterical and philosophical here. Like, I'm not gonna. Then I was like, oh wait, she has a daughter.
yeah, childbirth. That's always been. It's like the most striking memory of surrender that I have. At a certain point, doctor says, "Okay, it's time to push," and I'm like, none of this makes any sense to me in my mind. Everything like this child-sized watermelon is too big. Everything's like I don't understand it. Doesn't make any sense. And then I really started like my mind came in with the overthinking again. It's like people die in childbirth. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I mean, it's gotten better. It's not like we're in the 1800s now. We've got like modern medicine. It's like, yeah, but still, people die. I was like, and what if we can't do this? What if we are actually too small? Like I'm a small human. What if this doesn't work? And
You're a small human. It's true.
these are the,
I
like
didn't think
these are the
about that.
things that really I'm like, what about that? And so in that moment, I really had to sit there and go, okay, There's nobody else that can get me through this. A doctor can say it, a doula can say it, a midwife can say it, but I actually have to do the work. And then it's me and Krishna. And I feel like birth really has this mirror. It's like birth and death really have this really parallel line. So I feel like I'm looking down this parallel street. Like, if this was the end, would I be okay? Would I be able to say, you know what, Krishna, it's me and you. I'm going to go for it. And I had to really look at it and say, okay, there's no turning back. It's me and you, Krishna. Let's see how it works out. And when I came out the other side, I really felt like, I was like, oh, that's what surrender feels like. It's knowing that it's me and Krishna, and then coming out the other side saying, no matter what the outcome, I actually felt carried. I felt supported. I felt held, and I
Hmm.
was okay. So
Wow.
that's the most striking memory of surrender for me.
Okay, Kishore, write that one down. If you want to experience surrender, get pregnant.
I was just gonna say, I think it's really important. Thank you so much, Achuta, because hearing that story, even though it's not relatable for some of us, because some of us can't get pregnant, depending on our gender. But I think it's just the way that you articulated it so perfectly of like feeling carried and feeling protected, even in those times that it feels like I might not know what's going on and it doesn't make any material sense. Because I think in regards to surrender, I was reading also what Dayal wrote about that post, and that word surrender was the one that really stuck with me. Because I think with surrender, people get really scared at that word sometimes. Like, it can be a really scary process. And I think the most hmm, encouraging thing is actually like hearing stories like that from Achuta that she gave just now. That it's like, wow, I got through this. I felt carried. I surrendered to my higher power, and I felt protected throughout it. And it makes us feel all less alone. It's like, oh, if Achuta can do it, I can also do it. I can also like go through whatever I'm going through. Because something, Doyal, you wrote about this yesterday, and I really loved it. I don't have the post pulled up right now, but it was something along the lines of just like, we're all going through it. We're all going through it at the same time. And what is actually the scariest is thinking that when I'm going through it, I'm actually feeling alone. Like, I'm the only one that's going through it. I'm the only one who's going through this pain. And that's why I think that sometimes surrender can be really scary, because it's like, how am I supposed to surrender to this crazy situation, this bad situation, this traumatic situation, this situation that makes no material sense? But I think hearing stories like that, where it's like, wow, we're all going through it, and we can all do it. We can all do it together. So thank you, Achuta. It was so inspiring to hear from you.
That was my post yesterday. We're all going through it.
Yeah, we're all going through it.
I realized that because it was like I everyone I talk to these days, it's just like they're just like going through it, and I was like, it's everybody.
Hmm.
So we'll pick up on that thread. That's where we're leaving off today. Everyone's going through it. We'll pick up on that yesterday. I want to invite. We've got a scribe here, Kimberly. I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you like to read some of your takeaways, Kimberly? You can say no, but you're still on the spot regardless because I mentioned your name and called you out.
I can read some.
Okay, sweet. Let's hear it.
All right, so some takeaways from the podcast today was to accept that the opportunities and situations that are placed in front of you are not random, it's divinely arranged. Personal relationships allow you to get a taste of what loving one individual person is like, regardless of the feedback. And we get to learn how to love unconditionally, like God loves us and everyone else. And I also took away that I have the opportunity to deepen my connection with others when I learn to love myself.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you for those beautiful notes, Kimberly. Appreciate it. Thank you for the discussion, guys. 30 minutes. We keep it short and sweet. That's where we're at. Any final words or thoughts from you guys, Kishore or Chuta, before I turn my radio voice back on and send us all home?
I think it's Rumi, and he's saying, I see my house is on fire, and I start freaking out. I mean, it's paraphrased. And then I climb. I climb.
What's the Arabic Rumi wrote for freaking out?
Yeah. And then I climb to higher ground, and I see that everybody else's house is also on fire.
Hmm.
So it's that same idea that you know, your house is on fire and you're really freaking out and you're thinking, how am I going to get through this? But the moment we climb to higher ground and get a new perspective, we don't have to look at it like, why am I getting this new perspective? So like when things come back around again, like that, you know, eternal surrender and shadow work, when it comes back around, maybe it's not just to torture us again, but maybe it's to give us new perspective that everybody's house is on fire. And when we make it through, everybody's going to make it through.
Your burning house makes me feel better about my burning house. We know we're in it together and we can relate to each other and have compassion. That was the thrust of my post, was that like it increases compassion for each other because we're all going through it. Kishore, did you have a final thought or a word? If not, it's okay, but I
Yeah,
wanted to.
yeah. I wanna tomorrow talk about this surrender more because I feel like it's such a big topic that we could just really get into. But I remember again from Jahnavi's father, he said something so sweet and so simple about this. And he said that when we are looking for lessons in all of our life experiences, we will find lessons. And when we're not looking for them, we won't. And I think it's just so simple because it's like surrender is scary because we think sometimes, or we fall into that mindset of, cynicism is very rife. It's happening. And so that hopelessness of like, why is this happening to me? Nothing makes sense. How could this be? Not seeing that everyone else's house is on fire as well. It's like, I'm not in that mindset of surrender that, wow, maybe this is a lesson for me. Wow, maybe Krishna put this in front of me for a very good reason. So yeah, I just wanted to leave off with that if I'm putting myself into that mindset of like, I'm looking for lessons, I'm looking for what is the lesson in this, whether it be, quote unquote good or bad, then I will find a lesson. And if I don't, then I won't.
Beautiful. All right, guys, we're going to pick up on surrender tomorrow. And Kishore is going to tell his own experience of childbirth, which is not something that you expect, but it's pretty wacky. Love you guys so much. Thank you guys for tuning in live. Thank you for all the chats and the comments here. If you're tuning in or if you're just here live, please, we're online. We're live on all streaming platforms. We're on YouTube. We're Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Just type in Spirit Matters, Bhakti Center will pop up. Please rate and review because we're all about the external validation here on Spirit Matters, and we love when you actually the service because it actually promotes us and it puts us up and it makes it easier for other people to find us, and we just want to share this with more and more people and invite people into the party. So please rate, review, share with all your friends, and we look forward to being with you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.